Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12:20 on the 27th of October 2025, and it's what, Monday. And I find myself now out in the suburbs. To visit somebody, and they're staying in, like, I guess they call it a sanatorium here, but it's a lot of time older people, or I think most everybody is older there anyway. Maybe even starting at my age. Ugh, frightening. But some people, a lot of them have like mental problems and things, and anyway. But I'm in it's located at the edge of an area, and there's many hundreds and hundreds of houses out here. And mostly what I'm doing now, and I'm going to be walking and telling you about the news, a lot more about this missile. The Thunderbird missile is actually what we would call it in English, and it's raining, unfortunately. So I don't know how I'm going to do this without getting having my notes all running all over the place. But I'm just mostly here to show you like a lot of the houses and how houses look in the suburbs here. Instead of all those old houses I show you walking around in Minsk, you can see what the newer housing developments, what it looks like around Minsk. And I don't know, maybe there's 1,000 houses all together in a huge area going across the main street over there, or whatever. But I guess what you're going to notice is, for the most part, most all of these houses, I would say like 95% of them, are far higher quality than anything in the suburbs in the United States. Far higher. I don't know this. I guess I'm supposed to be wearing a baseball hat or something with this, otherwise it hangs down over my eyes. But a lot of these you can't see. A lot of everybody, of course, can hear. They can afford big fences around big yards, so you don't get to see that much about the houses, Unfortunately, unless they have. There's one over here that has metal. You can look through it. Well, you can see some of this house here. Look at the nice big thick wooden timbers on it, and very suited for being right at the edge of the area. And you got a lot of woods in the background. Very nice stuff. So I'll get to the news. Don't worry if you're mostly just looking at news or coming here for news. This house is not incredibly impressive. A lot of these in Minsk, but it's got a big yard, and it looks like it's got a lot of things in their house. Looks like some kind of a gazebo. It's a summer kitchen, I guess you would call it in Bulgaria, at least. And then I don't know, guest house, a little guest house thing over there. I don't know. I guess I can't wear this hood. It's gonna hang over my glasses, unless you gotta wear a baseball hat or something. That's what you get when you buy a Chinese knockoff coat. It's very good for keeping the water off of you, but it's maybe got some other problems. So I'll probably end up turning around and going back the other way. But let's get talking here about some news while I'm showing you all of this. Looks like somebody bought some lots here and nobody's developed them yet. Anyway, from a long time ago. It looks like a nice bunch of little forest here. Make a nice park. Okay, so yesterday I mentioned among others mentioned, of course, in their videos about this encirclement of these areas in Ukraine, at least the Donbass area, that Russia has them encircled. But I guess the word encircled is a little bit misleading. Well, this is a nice looking house there for modern type. And it's not really encircled, because maybe so as far as military is concerned, but you never want to encircle anybody like that, especially when you have 50% on the other side enemy territory. You encircle them, and then you're going to expose yourself. Then you might just find yourself getting fired at from two different directions. So they don't encircle. They leave I think what Russia has is maybe, this is not. They maybe left 20% of that exposed, and of course the Ukrainians can possibly go through there, but of course then they would open themselves up to getting, just like it would be if Russia encircles this, they would be opening themselves up to getting attacked from both sides. And you lose a lot of your forces. But look at this. This might, I don't know, maybe that's, well, this is a driveway, obviously, and I don't know if they own all of this property. Somebody had some decent money and they bought maybe this side, maybe both sides. Maybe this is the edge of the property. It's just interesting. Sorry, I have some different kinds of weird things always interest me. This one probably a metal, or looks like it might be real stone facing or something, but it's probably not built. Probably has concrete walls. I don't know what's on the inside. Bricks maybe. So this might be the end. And I can go, no, actually it looks like it winds around, but there's hundreds and hundreds of these houses like this here. So it lets you know that how poor these people are in Belarus to have these very expensive houses. Electric car of some sorts, but okay. So this encirclement is, it's not really an encirclement, not a full encirclement, as what we would think. And but at the moment, what the sad part of this is that the Ukrainian regime, I guess you would call it, they demand that these soldiers continue fighting, even though their supply lines are for the most part cut off or under attack. So they can't probably even get food. They have to make do with whatever they have there. And if you remember, there's what was happening at some point in certain places like Bakhmut. This one, I think it was called Snake Island or something like that, which was all fake. And Russia took them prisoner. And I think Ukraine is trying to say, that was back at the beginning of the war, that they said, no, we will continue to fight. And that comes back, and I guess Scott Ritter was talking about it. It was a, well, there's a lot of houses over that way too. But they said, and what these Ukrainians said, not on Snake Island, but in another place, I think it was Bakhmut or someplace, and the Russians were asking them to surrender. You know, that the Russians didn't want to kill these people because they're their brothers. And these Ukrainians said, Russians don't surrender. In other words, for one thing, they're going to fight until they're dead, until all of them are dead. And another thing is, to a large extent, they admitted that they are Russians, of course. And that is, of course, like a sad reality. It's like Leningrad or things like that. And, you know, Donald Trump and a lot of these other politicians, they seem to miss the point. They think that they're going to get Vladimir Putin to surrender. And that's obviously what the whole objective is right now. And it's pretty silly thinking that Vladimir Putin is going to surrender. What do you think is going to happen to his the public opinion of Vladimir Zelensky if he Putin if he surrenders? I mean, that's like he's gone anyway. He would be gone if he did that. And like I was saying it a lot of time, and what a lot of people don't really talk about, but I've noticed that some people are mentioning that when I was watching some videos lately, and they are talking about the fact that a lot of people are kind of pissed off with Vladimir Putin lately. And it's not because they necessarily just want to end the war to end the war. What they want is Vladimir Putin to get far more aggressive. And I've heard some of them say, why doesn't he just win the war? You know, and it's very, very true that Russia could very, very easily win the war. They could easily win the war. They could just do what the United States does. The United States just goes in and bombs everything. They kill everyone and everything. They destroy everything. That's how the United States did it in Iraq. They just bombed the crap out of everything. And when I was in the military at that time during the Iraq thing, and of course I didn't go, but then I was even talking to a lot of people that were there in my unit that were there, and they went to Iraq. Some of them went there, and they're saying it was really easy back in those days because a lot of them, they knew they couldn't, you know, beat America with huge, and, you know, Saddam Hussein didn't have that much. Saddam Hussein didn't even want to fight. But, you know, they're kind of pushed into it. It's a little bit like Venezuela today. Wow, look at this place. Wow, wow, wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Looking on the outside, if you can see, you guys can probably see better than me if I hold this thing up really high. Nice big windows, a lot of, well, maybe the forest blocks a lot of the light, forest on this side. But anyway, where was I at? I get some of these beautiful houses. Look at this big driveway, I guess. Jeez. Anyway, they said that they just would storm these bunkers and the Iraqis were surrendering. And of course, this was even many, many, many months before the United States declared Desert Storm. So the United States was deep into Iraq long before they declared that there was a war starting and things. And they do that all the time. There's a lot of things like this. The United States has things moving in and all. Look at this. Kind of a little bit Victorian looking sort of a, looking with the candle snuffer roof on the top up there. And these columns. It's a modernish type of column. It looks like they need to put a railing. Maybe they don't plan on putting a railing on that. Maybe this, yeah, obviously this is not a very old house, but it's, you can even still see the decals on the windows if you get up close. Maybe I can go around. Maybe this road goes all the way around. I gotta wait for this guy. So, but in any case, Donald Trump, it seemed like he understood Russia, Russian mentality, the Russian culture, and all that at the very beginning. He was talking about things and said, he even made a comment. He said, "You don't go to war against the Russians. You know, that's a big no-no." He basically said that. And now he's trying to go along with these crazy knuckleheads that should know much, much better in Europe, and they're trying to provoke Russia into starting a war. And of course, that's exactly what happened anyway in eastern Ukraine. They went out of their way and did everything possible to provoke a war. They even amassed troops on the border, threatening to attack into eastern Ukraine, which are Russian people and the Russian culture, and that goes way back, as I've already said. That was given to the region of Ukraine by Vladimir Lenin at the very beginning. That's one of the first big gifts that Ukraine, the region of Ukraine, got of territory. And it was never a country. I think it was a country for a short time in 1918, in truth, Ukraine, and that is it. That's period. And of course, you had Bandera, you know, wanting to create a Ukraine. But I think it was like this ONU and different organizations, and you're trying to do it, you know, back in those days. And I don't know, maybe the way to do it is that you have to have a Nazi mentality and wanting to kill a whole masses of amounts of people. It was not just the Jews that Bandera was against. He was against, I guess what they were trying to say is communism. But anybody that was under communism, and Stefan Bandera, of course, he was under this notion that Ukrainians are something special out of history, and that they are there to dominate. They're there to dominate. That's their role, is to dominate everybody. That they're the master race. That's probably why he liked Adolf Hitler. That they're a type of the master race. And as you know, they got a lot of this fake history that says that, you know, the Ukrainians are taught that they built the pyramids of Egypt, and everything that ever was great that ever happened in all of world history was because of the Ukrainians, and things like that. And it's like God's chosen people, similar to like what goes on. Israel's not, they don't even go anywhere near that far, but at least they just say God's chosen people, and they believe that they are the ones that are supposed to, and they, to a certain extent, do control the world. And I should add to that a little bit, if you guys have been hearing that the past few days, Benjamin Netanyahu, it's very funny, because older people like me that kind of paid attention to a lot of these certain geopolitical things that happened that pertain to Israel, you've noticed a lot of time that these the leaders of Israel, they often coerce or get the United States presidents or Congress to do things that they want them to do, like to go to war and to do things like that. And then they get back to Israel and they brag about it. They brag about how they control the United States government. And they've been doing that for quite some time. And that goes way back. Maybe even before my time, before I started watching politics. And there is no doubt, like Benjamin Netanyahu, there is even a television, and I don't know if you interview. I can't remember if it was in English or it was in Hebrew or whatever, but he was a very much younger guy. He had a full set of hair and everything. And he's talking about basically how Israel, I don't know if it was him himself at that time. It's been a month or two since I saw that, but somebody posted it up. But he gets on television, he talks about how they are the bosses, not the United States, that they control the US and not the other way around. That was a long time ago. He's said that a number of times since that time. Well, my phone went out on me. Anyway, I'm talking about how these leaders, especially Benjamin Netanyahu, are coming out and basically saying how they control the United States and not the other way around. And apparently Tucker Carlson, he talks to a lot of these other leaders in the Middle East, and he was mentioning on some sort of program, maybe it was his own program, that talking to these other leaders, that Benjamin Netanyahu goes around bragging to them that he runs the United States, that he gets, well, basically runs the foreign policy of the United States in the Middle East. And I've heard that so many times in so many ways. Oftentimes when you want to get a visa to go to like Egypt or something like that, I don't know exactly which countries anymore, but I remember this in the past, you had to go through the Israeli embassy or the Israeli consulate in the US to get your visa for like Egypt. It's like, what? Really? I don't know. But like I said, my telephone went out a minute ago, and I hope it doesn't go out again. And there is a truth that, and it's very strange, and I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but they have some sort of a back door in Samsung, and I have a Samsung telephone, and it makes me wonder if me saying certain things about Israel is going to make them somehow do something with my telephone. I believe anything nowadays, after the 9/11, taking jetliners and jamming them into sky-rise buildings or whatever. It's very strange. I don't see, maybe that's an oak tree. But I see these oak tree saplings right here, and there's another one right there, and another one over there. But maybe that is an oak tree right there. Must have been right next to it. Anyway, so, like I said, I'm pretty strange. I start getting distracted. And anyhow. So let's see, where was I at as far as my other things I was talking about. I hope this isn't going to be such a long video. Yeah, well, as far as that subject on Ukraine and them surrendering at, what is it, 10,500, you never know what's going to happen. And if some of them do want to surrender, that say, well, it's better to live than to die a certain death. It's like, what do you think I am, stupid or nuts, something, I'd rather live than to die. And the Russians, which are their brothers, it's not like they're going to like torture them like maybe what a lot of times the Ukrainians might do, or what the Israelis do to the Palestinians or whatever. So it's like, well, yeah, I think I'm stupid. But if they do, a lot of times, if they even look like they're going to surrender, a lot of the other soldiers will shoot and kill them. Russians don't surrender. So anyway, it's one thing to fight until you are defeated, but it's another to fight until you're dead. That seems kind of stupid to me. Okay, this is all devastating news, obviously, to Trump and the entire collective West. Donald Trump is going around making his rounds in Asia and all that. Some weird things are happening over there. There's 100% tariffs on China. Well, it looks like, maybe we're not going to have, I don't know if that has anything to do with what's going on there. And did I talk about that missile already? The Thunderbird missile. I have it written here, but I'll have a little bit to say about that in a little bit here. And that goes hand in glove, I guess, with what's going on in Ukraine, as far as because of both of those work to be bad news for the collective West, and even Donald Trump. I don't know. He's probably trying to play it down, and yeah, he did. As a matter of fact, what did he say? I don't think I wrote that in my notes. I didn't. But he says, oh yes, when he heard about this missile, he says, something like, oh, they have some things or whatever, and so do we. You know, so what is it that the United States, I don't know, did they ever show that they have any kind of a missile that's they don't even really have the hypersonic missiles. You know, everybody knows that they're trying to test these things, and they can't come anywhere close to Russia or China, or I don't even know if they can approach Iran. I don't know if they have missile technology as good as Iran's. So, and I have no doubt that United States has some big time technology somewhere. I remember, I guess it was some years ago, they're talking about a drone that the Air Force was developing. It's like a mosquito. Obviously, it's not going to look like a mosquito, and you're going to see some weird looking thing flying around, you know, but anyway, that it's for surveillance or whatever. It seems like maybe that was just a bunch of putting out some fake information. Looks like the United States government is really big into fake news as well, as if we didn't know. I didn't know if they'd go that route, but anyhow. So this missile undeniably is a huge game changer, and it seems to be by far, Russia has not put it into serial production yet, but maybe they have a few of these, and it is like the super weapon on Earth at this moment. It can carry a nuclear warhead, and well, let me see if I can read what it says here. Well, one of Trump's answers, I think this was announced before Russia announced their missile. Trump was talking about, you know, again, making battleships with these huge, massive guns like the Iowa had. And for some reason, they decommissioned those in the States. And Trump wants to make them so they can fire massive, you know, over 2,000 something kilometers, you know, I don't know, projectiles. Sounds more like a missile to me, but I don't know if you can send a projectile so far so easily, and how accurate would that be? Not very accurate at all if it's just a regular projectile. So, and Putin talking about this missile, he said it will take Russia into 2027 before they can start this serial production. Burevstnik missile. And what does that mean? You know, we know that the Oreshnik is what is that, a hazelnut missile, and this Burevstnik, it's difficult for us to really translate so much into English, but I guess the closest you can get is maybe Thunderbird. And what is a Thunderbird? It's a, you know, tell her daddy takes her T-bird away. I don't know, you know. We know the car, yeah. But a Thunderbird in Russia, you know, and you talk to Russians and or the, you know, people from this area, but, you know, Belarus, of course, is what I talk to. But they and it's mostly people at sea. When there are sailors, fishermen at sea, fishermen mainly at sea, and they see these birds, and it's starting to get gray out, you know, and it's like looking, what's the weather going to be like very soon? So they see these big birds, and they're not seagulls. They're quite a bit bigger than seagulls. So I'm not really even sure exactly, but anyway, we refer them to like thunderbirds, I guess. And these birds tell them that there's going to be a storm, and these birds thrive in storms. So I guess what this is supposed to designate in the Russian language is a bird of prey that thrives during a storm. So maybe if you can apply that to a missile, so when the storm is coming, these missiles become the top predators. So that is kind of, if they knew this in the West, which they don't, you know, that would be like, oh crap, you know. But just so you know, it's not like you can just translate that one word into an English word, but That's just the sense of that. I don't know if anybody else is going to be talking about this. I'm not a Russian speaker necessarily. I know a little bit of Russian, and I had to talk to get the sense, talk to people and find out what does that really mean, this word. So that's what it means. Where in the heck am I? How did I come? Oh, I came through this way. I'll just walk up this way, show you guys some more houses here. Since I passed the other one, that was just, I don't know, I guess that was a cul-de-sac. Cul-de-sac. Okay. And I guess the speed of this is not really that fast. It's around Mach 1, which is, for Russian missiles, it's not that impressive for Russian missiles. I don't know what the Pershing is. Maybe it's Mach 2 or something like that. So it's not hypersonic, it's supersonic missile, but it's got these other qualities. Of course, it can take a nuclear warhead, or it can take another conventional warhead, very, very devastating. And it can basically avoid all detection systems. It can fly very, very low. You see the height of this house right here? It can go, yeah. If you look at how many meters would that be? It's maybe almost 20 meters. So you go about another 1/3 above that. I'll walk by a house here and I'll show you at about how low of an altitude that missile can fly. Not that much higher than this house. And in that way it avoids all radar systems. And it goes from 25 meters to 100 meters. So you can get a five floor, I don't know, 6th floor, 7th floor apartment building. And most of the time it's going to be flying about that high, and it can avoid all objects until it gets its target. And I guess the ability of this thing to stay in the air, it can stay in the air, they don't even know exactly. They've done the testing, and this has like a mini nuclear reactor on this missile, and to some they say it can stay indefinitely. But why would you need it to be up there for 2 weeks? A loitering missile for 2 weeks. Apparently it can definitely go around the globe twice. It can go around the globe 2 times, the entire Earth for 2 times. So why, you don't need it anything to go more than that. And you can bet that in time they are probably going to be perfecting this to go even faster, which they don't really need to. But how can you avoid ground objects going, like, say, if it's Mach 3 times the speed of sound? I don't even see. What happens if somebody's flying some little drone up there? Like, apparently it just goes through it like butter. Or what about seagulls or anything else? Wow. So, okay. Okay, that's still about what I just told you about their Thunderbird, so to speak. Oh, and I had some comments. I have to talk about these comments. Somebody was commenting, and it's very strange. I got one comment, and it came in my notifications, but it is not on my, it's not on my YouTube, so you can't really read this. It was based, and I was looking all over. I said, where is that guy? What's his name? I wanted to give this guy credit for his comment, and I couldn't find it, so I have to go back to the notifications. But it's not in my, it's not on my channel, so maybe the rest of you cannot read this. His name was, and just a shout out for this person. He put a lot of time into this comment and a lot of information. And it was JJH8299, and it was a lot of good information. One of the things he was talking about, which I had forgotten, and it was about these Russia selling oil to India. And he said, and it's very true, that India makes a lot of money. So he was projecting that India is not going to give up Russian oil. And, you know, I was saying that they probably won't, but they won't give up all of it. And Donald Trump is, of course, I don't know what world Donald Trump is in, you know, and he mostly ends up practicing on fooling everybody. You know, like I said, I should show you all these nice houses continue. I'm not doing that, but he's trying to make everybody think that Russia is going to, I mean, that India is going to completely give up Russian oil. They might cut down, but maybe they're going to cut 10%. I have no idea. Maybe they're not going to cut anything. but he is under that impression. Maybe he wants everybody to believe that, and then he's going to, Donald Trump believes that what he says is reality. It doesn't matter what reality really is, but what Donald Trump says is reality. I'm starting to get that impression, even if it isn't reality. So, anyway, but JJH8299 made a very, very good point, because why would India make so much money on selling Russian oil? And of course, Europe is buying, that's probably the biggest customer of India. And they just send it around because it's still much cheaper than buying American oil. So why would they give that up? And China, I don't think China is going to be pushed around by Donald Trump. Donald Trump, like I said, he says that China is going to cut down drastically. And they made some talks. I guess they had a lot of talks yesterday. I didn't know exactly when they were, but that was through some diplomat. I don't know. He's going to talk to Xi personally. Maybe that's going on as we speak. But I don't think Donald Trump is going to push him around. And Donald Trump wants to put out some good news that he is the greatest, that he is the one that did this and he did that. And of course, he wants to put it under his belt, but secretly, and he talks about peace. And like the Iranians said, Donald Trump, he talks peace, but he wants domination. That's what his goal is domination. It's not peace. And he, of course, wants to put it under his belt that he is the one that defeated Russia. I've never been this way. Looks like, and I don't want to go this way now. Looks like somebody's still building over there. Big, big house. So that's a little bit. But anyway, you're looking at these huge houses. Obviously, one-family houses. I don't know if they rent to people. Why would they do that out here in this area? But huge houses. Anyway, that was one point that old JJH made. I think it's on his little symbol. It says JJ. So, and another part he was talking about is a lot of this drug trade, and he put a lot of references on there. And just in case you guys can read his comment or whatever. And it was a lot about so many people talking about how the United States is really, really big into the drug trade. And I came to the conclusion after seeing what he wrote, and even some of the things that I've heard and the things that I've seen with my own eyes, that the biggest drug cartel on the planet is the United States government. And they are bigger than all these cartels put together. I don't care how big they are, Mexico or wherever. But the United States, if you think about it, look at that. They're active in Afghanistan. They're active. I think they might even control a lot of these Mexican. What was it? The Sinaloa cartel. And a lot of this was put out by Ben Swan back in the old days, a long time ago. And then he was on Fox News, I think later on. He used to work out of Texas, and a lot of what he became famous for is exposing how the United States is working with all these drug cartels, in various ways, obviously. So, but even some of the things I've seen, I was staying on one small island. By the way, this island, this is where Donald Trump International Golf Course was located. Donald Trump Casino was located on this island called Canawan, within the country called St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And there was a warehouse of this company that was building a lot of things on that island, for super rich people, of course. And and like one of the later things, after I had left, then they were building a big marina and things like that. But anyway, they somebody that worked in the warehouse, and I kind of knew him. Sure, I'd met him and talked to him a few times. Didn't know him so well, but I know other people that did. But apparently this guy, he found within the container, he found a big shipment of drugs, like things like cocaine and things like that. And instead of him getting some sort of a recognition like good job and all that sort of stuff, he got fired. So that really tells you. And the lady that was in charge, I could get myself into big trouble and be pushing up daisies, of course, by putting out this information, but the lady that was in charge of this company that ran this warehouse as well, and she ran the entire construction company, who was the daughter of a big guy from Italy, a big boss from Italy who was big in the mafia in Milano, Italy, and she's of course the one that got him fired, and but what was I going to say about her? I forgot that part. It's been a while since I knew this stuff, but yeah, she fired that guy. And anyway, maybe that's mostly all I was trying to say, where her background is what it was. Look at this house. Lots of corners and things. A nightmare for the engineers and architects, kind of. Not that bad, but... So... But, let's see. Also, I've heard some things from the guy that was the head of security. And I was thinking when I went there that I was maybe going to get a job with this guy. But of course I didn't. And, but anyhow, he was telling me and all to leave that island. He said there was he's the head of security. And he finds a room in one, what's called the urban center or something like that, I can't remember, and filled with all sorts of weapons, lots of machine guns and things like that. But at that time, the lady that was in charge, you know, whose father was the big mafia boss building this resort, CCA is the name of the company. You can look this stuff up. You can probably find this stuff on the internet. But the building company was called CCA, but she had Israeli security guarding her, riding around in jeeps with machine guns and things like that. I don't know what other weapons. I didn't see the room myself. I can't verify that. I just know that this guy said, "Get off this island. You better get off this." So, you know, I'm thinking, well, why? I don't know. What are they going to come after me for? But anyway, this lady was Jewish. Her father was Jewish. He's a Jewish Italian, I guess, and from Milano, and was a big mafia guy. And so. Well, and the short and long of it is, it's a lot of corruption, and there's drugs even there. And then, you know, I've met a lot of people myself. You know, one guy lived in Southern California, and he was married guy, had kids and all that. And I was with him, you know, sitting around it one time. You know, he was even on like the dating game. You know, I don't know if they still have that in the United States. You know, as somebody there to, you know, possibly go out with some beautiful lady or whatever, how they do that stuff on those old shows, I remember. And he said, you know, he'd been to some of these parties and things like that. And I don't know if he actually lived in San Diego or whatever. I keep thinking San Diego, but anyway, but he was around there. He went to some of these parties, and sometimes, and there was like a famous gymnast lady, and she was at one of these parties and all that too. And I shouldn't actually mention what she and some guys were doing in a bedroom. You know, I think when he might have walked in this bedroom or whatever and caught them or something, but her and a group of guys, whatever. And, you know, a lot of time at these parties, but, you know, you hear about this so often, so very often, you know, this Diddy, I think this Diddy guy or Diddy or whatever that, I don't know if he's in jail or supposed to, I don't follow it, Diddy. And, you know, but a lot of time you go to these parties, some real crazy stuff, just like Mel Gibson says, you know, they're crazy, a lot of crazy stuff, you know, unbelievable stuff, Hollywood and all that sort of thing. But these parties, and then you know, you sit around the coffee table, you know, these long couches, you know, and he said that there's like drugs in there. You got like marijuana or cocaine, you know, it's just like a candy bowl, but that's your candy. It's a lot of these drugs. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And then you find out how much embroiled the United States government is in all of this stuff. And a lot of these people, maybe that they're also probably government people that are at these parties. And it's like, friggin' A, you know? Gosh. So, but I've seen and heard other things a little bit, and maybe just notions of things. You know, sometimes you sit there with investors. Like I talked I don't know, I can save a lot of this stuff. It's not really that relevant. I can put it in other videos and things like that. I've probably even mentioned it maybe at other times in other videos, you know, sitting around, and some of these guys, and I know now that one of them that I was thinking, I didn't think he was a billionaire. He actually is a billionaire, and but I've mentioned him before. I don't want to say any names. Like I said, I think I mentioned him the other day, and you know that maybe when he passes away, he's an older guy and all that, but he's involved in that kind of stuff too. Maybe he still is. I don't know. I don't know if he's even walking right now. I saw pictures of him, you know, got some kind of knighted from King Charles or whatever. Anyway, and he's got like by Virgin Travel, the #1 tourist destination in the Caribbean. One of the hotels, the one that I was actually, well, it's an island, and it's nearly the entire island. Matter of fact, he sold that. He's only a smaller shareholder in that island now. But anyway, at that time he was. And, you know, I could tell you about some things he's told me, but I don't know why they trust me. It's very strange. Or maybe they trust a lot of people, but nobody comes out and talks about it afterwards. So, let's see. But Donald Trump, as he's bombing all of these boats and things like here, it makes you wonder if he didn't really think, or you think these CIA masterminds and all these people in government would realize that it would cause people to stop and at least figure that a lot of people, like not just myself, but a lot of other people, would start looking a little bit deeper and looking at things that the United States government does, and then start reminding everybody at the very least of all of these times when the United States government in the past, and the CIA, is heavily and deeply involved with all these drugs and things in the drug trade. It's but they don't. So I'm getting towards the end. I didn't want to make too long of a video because I have to go back there, and like I said, we're going. Somebody has it's not visiting somebody and they have a big mental problem, and they're like kind of almost, they have these anger problems, and then they get so angry, and got to take all kinds of tablets, so that they don't get violent, and I don't know if I can tell you so much about this stuff, but it's depressing. And now they don't even want to speak. You say hello and stuff, and they don't want to speak to you, and they just want to show you how angry they are. But probably some certain drugs that they have to take makes it so they're not violent. And then you have all these problems with all this drug, and everybody's medicated in the United States. Well, it looks like this is a person that had mental problems already anyway. I don't know if in America, you have some little thing and they prescribe drugs for you. Oh, here's a regular old kind of house. Somebody probably, I don't know, got a decent yard. But anyway, see, like there is still some places, not here, but right over there, looks like it's a regular type of house too, interspersed in between a lot of these newer houses. But anyway, yeah, but like elderly people, and then they get here, and then you got this drug to take you up, and this one to take you down, this one to make you not violent, even when they're not violent, maybe they get hateful, I don't know. And then then they don't take the drug for a while, and then they really get really violent. And I've heard about like a lot of people when they put them on these drugs, and then when you try to get off of these drugs, it really, really messes you up. So I don't take any drugs at all. Any kind of medications, I steer far away from that stuff as much as I can, to be honest with you. I don't know, unless I've really, some kind of a thing where you're really, really messed up if you don't. So, yeah. And anyway, Donald Trump was meeting, some of these representatives, I guess, from China, and they're talking even about fentanyl and all that. And so when you think about this drug trade and all that, and a lot of this stuff, of course, it doesn't come from Venezuela and all that. I think a lot of it comes across the border from Mexico, and apparently it somehow has its source in China, I'm thinking. But it makes you wonder who's involved in that? Is the U.S. also involved in that? You know, during the Biden years, Biden was having some things, and you know that that old Hunter, he had kind of some weaknesses for some of these substances, so makes you wonder. And they're, you know, the Bidens are involved in all sorts of other things, and they have laboratories and all that, so it makes you sort of wonder if they have anything involved, or the United States starting at that time. And lo and behold, I guess after Putin did all this kind of stuff, it was this thing about this, you know, the United States is deciding, maybe they won't put 100% tariffs on China. Well, I don't know what that has to do with. I guess we'll find out more about that, I guess, as time goes by. What made the United States say that? There's deals and stuff going on, you know, behind the closed door. Russia, of course, wants to defeat, Trump wants to defeat Russia. And I don't know if he's got some sort of a notion on, he's trying to find ways, how can I defeat Russia? How can I defeat Russia? And then I can go after China. And China's not stupid, they know that. So, you know, it's whatever. And another thing that happened, I guess it was yesterday or the day before, Donald Trump, he's going around the world and going to talk to anybody and everybody trying to get rare earth minerals and things. And I think, you know, it's not really the problem is to get these rare earth minerals, but I think it's to develop them and to make them into some sort of substances that you can need. And Germany is also very, very, very desperate right now to get processed rare earth minerals for their weapons, because they're trying to build up huge military to attack Russia, as you all know. And it's probably not just Germany, it's probably the UK as well. So they need these rare earth minerals, and to get whatever the usable product from the rare earth minerals, how do you develop them or process them to be used in bombs and all that sort of thing. And China has kind of cut them off for right now. So they're all dependent on China if they want to make war, and maybe it's to a large extent for cell phones and electric cars. I guess you need these rare earth minerals, and for the most part, the only ones that can really do that is the Chinese that can. So Donald Trump is probably doing something like that with the Chinese at the moment, maybe to get the technology to process rare earth minerals. I don't really know, but he's got to be kissing ass about big time right now. And yeah, so Malaysia, I guess they're going to be trading. Australia, Donald Trump is going to everybody. Ukraine, everybody, trying to get rare earth minerals. Rare earth. And maybe he believes that they can find a way to process these. Eventually, of course, that's definitely going to be the case. So, but, what was I talking about? Netanyahu, I was forgetting. And Netanyahu was saying how ridiculous it is. We don't control the United States. We don't say that. We never say that. And of course he does. They certainly do. They always brag that they run the United States. And I guess it was this Colonel Larry Wilkerson I saw on some interview. I think it was with Blevin, what's her name? Rachel Blevin, or whatever. And he was talking, no, the United States actually controls. But anyway, he had a way to kind of make it look like that. But I kind of don't buy that anymore, because when you're looking at it at face value, you can see right in front of your own eyes. Israel even admits it. It's much cheaper to buy a politician than it is to buy a tank. So they have control over huge amounts of politicians. Who was it? Matt Gaetz even admitted it. How many of them have admitted it in the past? So many of them. And they control it, you know, and they keep these guys in power. They give them the money, and they have all the connections. Bill Clinton had said that even back in the days. You know, he's talking to Monica Lewinsky, that Israel monitors all the telephone conversations. They can probably listen to everybody's. You know, the Samsung cell phones, I just talked about that. These people, they basically, I'll tell you what, at sometimes, and I don't have anything really against any of the honest people and all that in Israel, and I'm sure there's a lot of them. There's probably some really good people there, but sometimes you start to think, well, what is the best solution? And I say, if you can get those people out, the good people, you know, and then it was do something like Joseph Stalin was saying, you know, that he wanted to round up all of the top people in Germany at the end of World War II and just put them all to death, all of these top people. And you know, when you start to think about this, Joseph Stalin, and you look at what was the precursor for the European Union? A lot of them that they put in charge. I guess the one, whoever would be, I don't remember what they call it or something like that. But the guy that ran it, he was a former Nazi. They even have photographs of the guy in his Nazi uniform. And he was the guy in charge of the European Union. And he was put there by the West. It's like, what's going on here? Ursula von der Leyen, Annalena Baerbock. And it makes you wonder, do these people still have allegiance to that? And then when you're looking at Ukraine and the ones that actually run Ukraine, it's like, well, gosh, you know, I mean, am I really seeing what I'm seeing here? Is this really going on? I mean, you could go deeper and deeper, and the more you look, the more you find this stuff out. And it's like, I mean, how are we being fooled? I mean, what the heck is going on? Are we missing some info? We're certainly missing some information. And who is running everything? You know? I'm not saying that Adolf actually lived or whatever, but you know, what am I to say? I don't know. It just goes on and on. And Rand Paul, another thing I'm talking about, like this drug trade or all this. Rand Paul, he was actually friends with Donald Trump now, but he's not even invited to any. They keep him out. They have him blocked on all these meetings about things that are going on. You know, when you know, and Rand Paul, all he is saying is, why don't you give these friggin' people that you're bombing in these boats, give them due process? You know, you can't just go around and be bombing everybody. And like I said, it's a known fact that they're killing. A lot of these people are perfectly innocent. They're just friggin' fishermen. And I think Max Blumenthal even said that they're killing fishermen. I'm not saying how many of them. I'm sure that some of these are drug boats. As a matter of fact, I know they are. And you're looking at these boats. They have 3 big motors on the back of it. You know, it's not for water skiing. You know, and they're not fishermen. Why do they need 3 big, huge motors on the back of their boats? You know, some of those. It doesn't look like they're carrying drugs when they show these boats, but I don't know. You know, they might have them hidden under something. I don't know. And I don't know. But like I said, I'm not saying that they're all fishermen, but I'm sure they did kill some fishermen. But this is even though it's kind of bad weather, I didn't really hardly see anybody at all. I'm able to show you guys all of these nice. These are suburb houses in Belarus. So when they tell you that everybody is so really poor in Belarus, and you know, and I show you all these older houses that, you know, in the area that around where I live in inside of Minsk, you can see, and look at this. A lot of these, they go on quite a ways, and there's a main street out there, and it's beyond that there's a whole bunch of these houses, and there's hundreds and hundreds of these houses. This one here, it could be a duplex. Maybe there's 2 families, like one living on one side and one the other, and they haven't yet put up a fence yet, as you see. Maybe that takes some years, but it's not like they don't have money. And you see bigger houses over that way. Here's one here, and massive big house over there. Looks like a brick house in the distance. You probably can't see it, unfortunately. And of course, this is a kind of a newer road, and why it is not paved yet, I don't know. You know, some big houses there. I could probably, I'll walk a little bit further. I'm probably supposed to be going back here, but they're probably waiting on me. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe a person is starting to talk now instead of freezing up and just staring at the wall. Anyway. But, like I said, they're blocking out Rand Paul as well, and there's some friggy crap going on there as well, as you know. Our U.S. government, look at this. I wonder if this is, let me go. I have to see this. Is this a log cabin, or is this just made to look like a log cabin, and it has this, you know, they have like sometimes phony siding. I don't know. Sometimes, you know, AI. Is it AI? I can't tell sometimes. Some of these videos. Look at a nice. Looks like this is really a stone gateway. And I'll tell you. Let me look. That my glasses are getting a bunch of rain on it. I don't know. Maybe that really is a big log cabin thing. And what about the one next door? Is that the same sort of a deal? Maybe so. Maybe it's planks over there. And as you see, lots of houses, and it goes quite into the distance here. Oh, the poor Belarusians, look at how everything is so bad over here under a terrible dictatorship, and and it's so bad here and in Russia and all that. And you know, a lot of time when you're living in the United States and they tell you how much greater and how much better everything is there and how it's free and this sort of thing and all this, and then you actually go out into the real world on your own and you go visit some of these places, and then you find out, boy, they're feeding you with a friggin' whole bunch of bullshit. You know? It's enough to make you friggin' sick, you know? Oh, actually, that's kind of a log cabin thing too, is it? Or maybe they really squared off the big timbers. A lot of wood in Belarus, but a lot of forest, like over there in the distance. But wow. There's like 4x4s or 8x8s or something like that. Interestingly made. If you guys are into this sort of thing. Anyway, most of the time you guys are here to look at news and things, and I don't want to distract you from what you actually come here for. And even though I find so many things interesting, somebody once in my class in Russian said, you know, and she was from Peru, but she's not a very nice person whatsoever. And you know, in some ways that's pretty good. You hear some things that people will insult you and things, but you can sometimes get some really good information that's true about yourself that nobody else will tell you, and about even the Russian language. And she said, I have too many distractions. Gee, can you really see it? Does it really show? You know, I'm interested in too much stuff. You know, I find too many things fascinating and all that. So maybe I gotta get myself in some room with nothing on the wall and no music or nothing, and just go with that or whatever. No clothes, no food. Anyway, okay. So I better get back to where I'm supposed to be going here, and I hope it was some good, interesting information for you guys. Mostly a lot of chatter and showing you houses and stuff in this area. So anyway, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.